Now I became deaf, destroyer of the worlds. Another episode about Robert J. Oppenheimer. I had a chance of watching the film yesterday. I would like to review it. I haven't been in the cinema for a long time, so it was an interesting experience. I'm here with Professor Misha. Professor Misha, you haven't watched the film.
I haven't watched the film yet. I'm planning actually to do it very shortly,
Okay.
and I hear only good things about it.
It's interesting, I spoke with Rabbi today, Rabbi Dov, and I mentioned that I watched the film because I would like to speak with him about Oppenheimer as well from certain other points of view, angles. And he told me, I've heard it's too long. So for me, it's only too long if I don't enjoy it. Nothing is too long for me. I very much, I understand, I appreciate art. I think that art doesn't need to be instant. It doesn't need to be of popular structure. People got used to very quick, especially in our day and age of TikTok, everything has to be 30 seconds. And films which are passing 2 hours, and especially if they are about content, more about the script rather than the action, become a bit too long for most people. However, I got to tell you, as I watched it, that I think that the emphasis on the actual hearing that Oppenheimer was going through in 1954, around the 50s, him being accused of being affiliated with communist ideologies of people and the party, and his security clearance, for me it was just too much of it. I would have preferred if Nolan was to focus more on the technical, philosophical side and actually the personality of Oppenheimer, which he did, but I would have liked it to be even further into that. You can ask me whatever you want, Misha, because you haven't watched the film.
Yes, well, kind of I understand what you're talking about because obviously the life of Oppenheimer spans over 60 years, and he, as we discussed last time, he achieved a lot early in his life. So what you're saying, if emphasizing all this witch hunt, all this McCarthy time over the 1954 would be very, very unfair to him. So, but how can I understand? It's probably time for us, and generally speaking, the world and in America particularly, to kind of look at this 1950s with a perspective, because the more I look at that time, the more I see kind of injustice was done to people. People like Oppenheimer who were, and many other people who made such a huge contribution into the Allies' victory during the war. So maybe there is a time kind of to look how we right the wrongs. Like for example, UK recently
With
right the
Alan
wrongs
Turing.
of Alan Turing
Yes,
on
Alan
the
Turing.
highest level, on the Queen and Prime Minister level.
Yes.
So maybe that's time to do with Oppenheimer as well and other people who were very unjustly treated.
I got no argument against it. I agree with you. I think that Oppenheimer deserves it. It's a very important part of his story as well. But I think that Nolan pushed it a lot too much. It just became too long. It's like repeating itself and pushing and trying to postpone it and creating more and more tension in a place where there was no need. For me, let me just tell you in general, Nolan is a fantastic filmmaker when it comes to the technicalities of films. It's not like I watched all of his films, but I watched Interstellar. I really liked it. It's a science fiction film which is very scientific. There's a strong scientific component there, and also it's very old school. It reminds me of the old school stories I used to read. I still read from time to time science fiction. It reminds me of something that Heinlein would have written. So it's just there's some sort of feeling about it that is more old school, and he knows how to use big budgets very well. And he's a very technical filmmaker. So Dunkirk, for example, have you watched it?
Yes, of course, yeah.
I really liked it because it depicted very well, in my opinion, the chaos, the uncertainty, the fear, the anxiety in a battlefield, especially such a battlefield. So Nolan really knows what he's doing, but when it comes to Oppenheimer, in my opinion, the film was not really extraordinary. It was a good film, but nothing that I would out of the ordinary. I would have liked it to be a bit more edgy, if you understand what I'm
This
saying.
is the Oppenheimer film.
Yeah, I think so. And again, coming back to the hearing and just trying to dig into that time in the life of Oppenheimer again and again and pushing. And Edward Teller was actually an interesting actor because he was portrayed as pretty much some sort of I think, in my opinion, a spoiled brute. He was a very forceful man, which I think is correct. In his life, he was like that. It seemed like he was a bit of a bulldozer.
Yes, well, he's He was a great scientist, of
Yeah,
course, a
it
great
was. Yeah.
physicist of difficult again life, but it's not a secret that he had a difficult relationship with
Oh, yes.
Oppenheimer. And I would not particularly be surprised if you make Oppenheimer your main protagonist, your main hero.
Yeah.
The person, his main adversary, probably would be portrayed negatively.
Yes. Yes.
But Edward Teller, basically, generally speaking, was very controversial figure. The one probably of maybe would be interesting one day to for us to speak about him,
Definitely. Oh wow, he was very important in popular. I think.
because he didn't mince his words, and also he was a bit like again like Marmite. He was, some people liked him, some people really hated him. But that's life. You know, the scientist, somebody who is a genius in science, it doesn't give him or her some carte blanche, you know, to treat people badly. They're still
Absolutely.
responsible, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yeah, but I think it was, as you say, by the way, it was. I think it was in the benefit of the script to portray him as someone like that. It was a bit more of a spoiled brute, you know. He was not necessarily. He was there a character that in a way tried to push, was very forceful about the hydrogen bomb, and it seems like Oppenheimer, which was his baby. It has to do a lot with the ego as well. The way that they're trying also to be fair to Nolan, and again, he's a good filmmaker, and I saw him being very accurate about it. So he allowed many angles. He also shows certain angles that Strauss, you know, the guy that was doing one end with Teller. He was accusing Oppenheimer of being some sort of a egomaniac. You know, he's like a self-centered man who just likes the fame of the atomic bomb. He wants to be just there by himself in the headlines as being the father of atomic bomb. He doesn't want Teller to take
His glory of being
glory,
father of
exactly.
hydrogen
No,
bomb.
hydrogen bomb, exactly. You understand? So it shows you all kind of. I mean, again, it seems like the opposing forces to Oppenheimer were depicted a bit more as forceful people, not necessarily nice people or pleasant people. But it's up for your interpretation.
Well, it's again very difficult for us without knowing them personally to
Absolutely, yeah.
judge. But you know, unfortunately, the rivalry between the great scientific minds, it's not a new thing. We remember it from Fermat. And yes, and
Newton and Leibniz, no?
Newton
Oh, wow,
and
that was probably
Leibniz
the
to
biggest
start with.
beef in modern science.
Yes, and now a lot of things called Newton-Leibniz formula, Newton-Leibniz theory.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not a new things, unfortunately. But again, it's a pity if they really kind of concentrated only about 1954 and this controversy, because obviously Oppenheimer is much more than that.
Yeah, no,
If I would be looking at these things, I probably would put a little bit more emphasis, and I don't know, I really look forward to look at the film, his childhood, because it was quite unusual childhood.
Yeah, not much his childhood. Sorry that I'm interrupting. I'm just telling you, there was a lot about Oppenheimer, the young man. Definitely, I think it's 3 hours the film, so there is a lot there. And about Oppenheimer in Cambridge, Howard before, you know, all this the fact that the story that he tried to poison his teacher with the apple, and about his love affairs as well, affiliation with the Communist Party at the beginning. The film is like jumping between, let's say, the times of the beginning, the 20s, no, more like the 30s, and then into the 50s, and then back into the 40s, and then to the 50s. You understand that?
So he was jumping from time to time.
Yeah, exactly, and showing also the evolution of Oppenheimer as a man, and then becoming the head of Los Alamos, the Manhattan Project.
Did they explain why he was chosen rather than somebody else? Because that was, looking back, it was quite controversial.
It is, yes, and there was a lot of problems with that, and the film does show it. Again, I have to give it to Christopher Nolan. I mean, he doesn't need me to give it to him because he's a very good filmmaker, but I'll give it to him anyway. Very accurate film. From what I know about Oppenheimer, he did a very good job. General Groves, I believe was his name, the guy that from the military who took Oppenheimer. Matt Damon, by the way, is acting. He is probably the best actor in the film, in my opinion. The man who is doing General Groves.
Really?
Fantastic. You had Robert Downey Jr. there as well. Very good actor, but at certain point I just got a bit tired of the act. It just became very, how should I say it, loud and just not.
Groves?
Not Groves, Strauss.
Strauss, okay.
But coming back to Groves, yeah, he told Oppenheimer something like, I've heard about you that you're a womanizer, that you're this, that you're that. All kind of things doesn't necessarily sound positive, especially not from this military type point of view. But then he said, but you are a man of integrity, I believe. And also, you are. He just knew that he's an oddball, but he's the right oddball for the mission. Plus, he had these things. I think someone even told him, if I understood it correctly, you are science greatest salesman. He had this thing about him that he had the ability of get people excited and get people motivated, and he knew how to organize
He is the best salesman for science.
in science. Yeah.
In science. Well, that's interesting because it's kind of the image. My kind of impression of Oppenheimer is that probably I read when I was 14 or 15. My both parents gave me this book, which was rare, and because I actually wasn't in charge of what I was reading, and I was fascinated by this book. I was probably reading it a few times in a row. It was called "Brighter Than Thousand Suns," which is
Yeah.
probably also a quote from Bhagavad Gita or something like this, or from somewhere.
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Yes, and the book actually made for me the very lasting impression. I probably need to reread it because the impression which I get as a young starting scientist, teenager, that kind of very brutal military guy, Groves, suppressing these geniuses which are coming from Europe and they have no power and no rights. Apparently, that wasn't not how it was portrayed in the film, was
No, not at all. It's interesting because it seemed like Groves had a lot of respect to Oppenheimer, the character, and he actually knew how to use him correctly, and it seems like he was successful. Not like he was successful because they managed to create an atomic bomb. So the mission was accomplished. They paid so much money into it, billions, and it was billions back then as well. And we had 4,000 people, I think, working together in different centers. And it was incredible operation, and Oppenheimer managed to prove he brought them the conclusion what they wanted. And of course, there is also the part there when he meets with the president after, and he tries to speak with him and try to convince him, to be careful with this new weapon because as Niels Bohr is there in the film as well, coming
All
to
right.
visit, yes, Niels Bohr, and he tells Oppenheimer something. This is not a new weapon; it's a new world.
It's new.
A new world.
World.
A new world. You understand? So it's not. We are not giving them a new weapon. We are creating now a new world for them. So there's need to be so much thought get put into it. The moral consequences, the philosophical consequences of having such a weapon in your hands. But they spoke about it. You can see that again. The film is a good film. You can see a lot of conflict going on there, and Oppenheimer they wanted to believe that it's going to be the weapon that will end all wars. It's the war that will end all wars. You understand?
That's very frequent quote, I think,
Yes.
from that. And did they portray his relationship with Harry Truman, who apparently had very bad opinion of Oppenheimer after the war?
Yes, that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to say. That he came pretty much. I think in the last part of the film, you can see that he's coming to Truman and he's trying to warn him, or at least to convince him. I think against the hydrogen bomb. He told him, look, we got enough power in our hands already. Let's speak with the Soviets. Let's just tell them, don't need to go to the hydrogen bomb. It's too much. And Truman just looked at him something like, and he said, he told him when he left, he said like to his handler, he said something like, I don't want to see this crybaby again.
Right. I read much more.
That's what he said on the film. Yeah. Whatever.
The son of so and so, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's understandable. It's understandable because, well, obviously the scientist supposed to, and you say that Edward Teller wasn't like this, but scientists were supposed to be compassionate and think about the human cost of things. And also probably from the Oppenheimer's point of view, as far as I read, the main enemy was Nazi Germany, and the Soviet Union was kind of an ally. And obviously
that's what brought him a lot of troubles as well later on. But that was. But again, there is an interesting they do show an interesting perspective about him being also selfish about it. I don't think he was selfish about it, but it seems almost like he wanted to be the main man and not Edward Teller, and the hydrogen bomb was a development and something that he was not too keen about because of that. But I don't think
Do
that
you
was.
think it's really true?
I don't know, but I don't think so. But he was such a polarizing character. You know, I think that in order to understand Oppenheimer, we need to invest so much time. We probably will never understand. But he was such a multi-dimensional character and lived in so many contradictions, and I think he had a lot of identity issues as well. You know, I watched a lecture by a man by the name of Ray Monk, and he wrote a book about him, and it's a very good lecture, and I think he got more than one lecture, and he invested 11 years of his life researching into him,
Into Oppenheimer.
into Oppenheimer. And before that he wrote about Wittgenstein.
Right.
So he's not. It's not like he's a stranger when it comes to talking about mathematicians, philosophers, scientists. And Oppenheimer was an extremely complicated character. Apparently, he was master of French literature, and he wanted to be a writer. He started as a writer. He and Ferguson. You remember Ferguson, the guy
Yes, of course.
he attacked later, apparently.
Yes, yes, yes.
Before they started studying chemistry. This is a part that you don't see in the film. And I wish, like you said, that would have been shown a bit more.
No, he has been. Well, it's a limitation probably of film. Again,
exactly.
however long is the film, 3 hours for the 63 years of his life is probably short things again. And as we said the last time, Oppenheimer is very difficult to talk about. I will kind of pause for a second. Because when we talk about many other scientists, it is very straightforward. Their life could be difficult, could be easy, could be long, could be short. But you come and you just praise them and you say this, this, and this. Oppenheimer is difficult because, look, with his trying, in my humble opinion, not researching deeply, but reading what I read, and I read enough, that I don't think he was necessarily, how to say, psychologically very
Stable.
stable. Because you know, whatever you go, you don't like your boss, you you don't poison them. And trying to, okay, somebody decided to go with another person, you don't go to strangle your competitor. You, of course, you kind of emotionally can be upset or whatever, but you kind of control yourself. So that's why, as we said last time, I was a bit surprised reading it again, that the American establishment decided to appoint Oppenheimer with all his communist history. I would imagine FBI knew about it.
They did. Mental health issues as well.
Mental health, huge things. Plus, I don't know. We need to emphasize this probably within, at least I think. We need to think that the 1940s and 1950s was very different from today's very egalitarian, very kind of
liberal, progressive,
very progressive, very kind of colorblind, gender neutral. It was not like this
absolutely
at all.
not.
It was very WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Not well, everybody who were not part of these things. Like I heard from people who remember this time of 1950s, who was saying like the restaurants and clubs were saying like, no Jews, Irish, and dogs, and something like that. So basically, that was very, very unfortunate from minorities. Even though minorities, non-WASPs probably were majority, vast majority. But you needed to be a
they
certain.
didn't have the power. Yes.
Yeah, a certain white Anglo-Saxon Protestant family, probably settled in America for many generations. He was a son of an immigrant. He was Jewish. He was very much European in his outlook. He probably would have been a very good bridge between American establishment and all these European, largely Jewish guys.
He brought European physics into America in so
which
many
was
ways.
great. But probably from the point of view of establishment, it would be probably, if I would do General Groves, I would put somebody else.
It's absolutely right. And and again, he was a very colorful character, and he was very much into the arts. He loved painting. He was a friend of T.S. Eliot, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
he was really not the military type. But
Exactly.
these type of oddballs, eccentrics, won the war. If it's Turing on this side, and if it's Oppenheimer on the other side, so that's the way it is. I guess that Groves had a very good look. He's depicted. He got a lot of respect to Oppenheimer in the film. That's from the film point of view. But I think that he had a very good sense, very good intuition. He was an engineer himself, by the way. Let's not forget.
Right.
It doesn't mean that because you're an engineer you understand. A lot of engineers has nothing to do with understanding physics or quantum physics or the philosophical view that is needed. For quantum mechanics is like it's something different completely. This is for me natural philosophy, if anything. You don't need to be part of that world in order to be a good engineer. But Groves had a good intuition, I think, about this man. He realized that he is going to be a force, and he was very admired as well. Let's not forget it, Oppenheimer. I mean, between his students, he had something about him. He has a charisma, and he had this something about him. Even though he was an oddball. He was a complicated character.
We said it last time that even
Yeah.
like since he came back from Europe in 1920s until he was chosen to Los Alamos to Manhattan Project for these 15 years or so, he had a very kind of Marmite reputation.
Yeah,
Some people
exactly, yeah.
worshipped him really, like mimicking him, etc. Some
Opie.
people just didn't exactly, and some people just hated him. So, but at the same time, understandably, the universities were fighting for him because he himself was in a way American embodiment of European physics.
Yeah, he brought
So,
a lot of his physics to the new land. But anyway, dear Professor Misha, I think that you should go and watch the film when you
I
can.
will.
And I enjoyed it. I'm just going to finish and saying that yeah, it's a good film. I don't think it was the best film of Christopher Nolan, but it's a good film. And for anyone who hasn't done a research or hasn't read about Oppenheimer, I think the film is pretty accurate, so we'll get a good idea about the man. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care.
you.